So about a year ago, I bought this frankly ridiculous shirt with loads of very camp leopards on it. Um, Basically waiting for a special occasion to wear it. I never quite had something that made sense. And I realised that I do currently look like basically a very gay Elvis. But um, I was wanting to save it for a special occasion. And here we are. Finally, after about 5 years of this project, I have finally completed something that I have been wanting to do for a really long time, which is to read every shortlisted book from the Booker Prize's history. So since 1969, not as in that's not when I started reading them, but from the first ever shortlist in 1969 until 2025, there have been, as far as my calculations show, about 340 Booker books. And that's not including the long lists. Quite frankly, after a certain point, I sort of looked at the long lists for previous years and thought, well, adding those into this project adds a whole other like 100 books. So I've kind of got the long list from about 2019 onwards, because that's when I started reading the project live, as it were, or kind of reading the Booker as I was going. But yeah, here we are. A ridiculous amount of books later. I have read all of the shortlisted books from the Booker Prize's history, which is quite a weird achievement. And part of me sort of wonders, what on earth am I doing with my life? And I say that particularly whilst wearing a very camp leopard shirt that might also be a blouse, I think, actually. But all of that is to say, this is really exciting. This is what I started my BookTube channel for about 5 years ago. I started reading them in about, I think, late 2019. And then very luckily, as it were, obviously not a great time, but very soon after lockdown hit, and that actually made a large part of the early stages of this project a lot easier, and of having a BookTube channel. And so here we are, sort of 5-ish years later, and I've read all of these books, and that is quite frankly absurd. I know somebody else has done it before. I'm definitely not the first. And by fun coincidence, the first person, at least publicly known to have done it, was also called Bob. So I'm glad to continue the tradition of Bob's. But yeah, it's a weird thing because I've been working at this project for so long. It's what my channel is named after. The my BookTube channel was essentially started as a way of holding myself accountable while I was reading the shortlists, but also as a source for me to be able to talk about them as I went. And then I got very distracted by many other books that were in and around. But it's really, really exciting to have finally done this. In the last couple of days, have been on those final two books. And one of them being Orchard on Fire by Sheena McKay. And that one, I suddenly realised about a week ago, I couldn't find my physical version of it. And so very quickly downloaded it onto my Kobo, being like, we're at the finishing straight here. I need to finish this. And then also I was reading, or listening to the audiobook of What's Bred in the Bone by Robertson Davies, part of the Cornish trilogy, which I have as a physical thing here, but I think I'm very much in that end of year thing where my brain has stopped working. And so any sort of audio support for that has been wonderful. All of which is to say, I at some point will be doing even more bookerish stuff of just talking about everything that's come from doing this whole project. I have got the last of the decades to do, so I'll finish the best of, or at least my personal favourites from the 1990s. I will do some of my sort of overall favourites at some point. I'd also really love to hear if you had things that you'd like to hear as part of that. Are there any particular topics of Booker's history that you would like me to cover? Because I am aware it's a very specific niche, and at times I've wondered to myself, why on earth have I decided with my one life on earth to do this? But here we go, and it's so lovely to get to this. I think I remember having a moment at the end of last year where I realised if I really threw myself at it, I could essentially have read the last 20 books in the last month of the year and kind of have left it in 2024, and that didn't feel right. I think also my brain wasn't working by the end of the year, and I thought maybe it wasn't worth forcing those last books in. And I'm really glad I took my time with it, because I've discovered some real gems in the last little wave there that were books I'd not heard of or already thought about before, and so that has been a really exciting part of it. I think just generally speaking about the whole project, it has featured so many absolute gems of authors of books that I otherwise would not have come across at all. Julian Barnes jokingly called the Booker Prize posh bingo. And although there is an element of sometimes it can feel that, it's kind of a bit dubious. Where did these books come from? Who chose them at what time? Are these the books of the era? I think what's also really interesting is that this has been such fertile ground for exposure to new books. If you think even just about some of the books that have been shortlisted or longlisted in the last few years, so many of those are authors who maybe were coming up with a debut that otherwise would not necessarily have maybe had as much traction. Maybe some of these are authors who've been writing for a while and are really kind of at the peak of their powers, but this is an extra little nudge. I think prizes can be such wonderful spaces to find new books. And prizes are not without their sort of challenges and difficulties, but I think there is something really special about having a prize or any kind of way of finding new books, new authors, all of those sorts of things. And that's been such a beautiful part of this whole project for me, has been these 340 books. Some of them I did not like. Some of them I absolutely loved and have become some of my all-time favorites. Some of them just were entirely new to me, and maybe they've not become my favorite book of all time, but they opened my mind in other ways. And I think that's all the beauty of that. So yeah, it's been such a delight to read all of these books from over the Booker history. I'll do more videos where I deep dive into other various things about it all, because it's there's so much to talk about, from the history of all of this to what books weren't included or maybe weren't eligible at the time, to sort of books that have really stood the test of time. There are lots and lots of things that go into it that I'm really excited to talk about. So this is not, I don't know if this is good or bad news for most people. This is not the end of me talking about the Booker Prize. In fact, this just now means that I will now be following up with individual shortlists that I've not yet covered. The best of the 90s one, or my favourites from the 90s, I should say, and a few other topics. But if you do have really specific things that you'd like to see me cover for the Booker Prize, now that I have, about the Booker Prize, now that I have read all of the shortlisted books, which still feels quite weird to say, then please do let me know. It's such a joy to have done this project. I'm also kind of nervous now for what comes next. I think I probably, without immediately setting myself a new goal, I do want to read the shortlisted books from the International Booker. There are not as many of those, and I've really loved the shortlists for the years I've been doing. So that will happen. That's going to be sort of kind of coming anyway. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What next? What would you like me to cover? And also, yeah, just a massive thank you to people who have stuck by and supported the channel while I've indulged a very niche thing for a while, where I've basically just gone off on my own and been like, I want to do this thing, and people have somehow watched, which is still bizarre to me, and still bizarre, I say, as I present this random leopard shirt. But thank you all so much. Let me know what you'd like to hear of next, and also I can now go into 2026 without this big reading project hanging over me. And yeah, it's been lovely. I'm really glad I did it. And thank you all for being around while I did that as well, and for all of your insights and comments and everything as well. Take care and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.